their roots underground or fight for sun. Oh, there we go. I gotta click OK. All right. But yeah, there's a lot to the plants that are growing in the wild and not necessarily the ones that we grow just in pots as well. But I mean, they all kind of do the same thing, just a little bit different potency. So the main topic I'm going to be talking about today is antibiotic resistance and just kind of how bacteria is starting to fight back against our modern invention of the synthetic antibiotic. So things like penicillin, which was invented in 1920s by Alexander Fleming, and that same month that he discovered penicillin, that same month he found a bacteria that was already resistant to it. It had already gained resistance. And in the 1920s, whenever we were observing bacteria, they were not talking to each other, right? They would only talk to each other inside of their same family or sometimes only in their same species. So things like oh, geez, I don't know. There's Staphylococcus wouldn't necessarily talk to Streptococcus. You know what I'm saying? So these kind of things were a lot more separated just because they didn't have to try to survive as much as they are. So our overuse of antibiotics, it might not sound like we overuse them, but holy crap. If you include things like agricultural industry, things like fish farms, chickens, cows, pigs, a lot of the times we just pump them full of antibiotics even before putting them on a truck. Not necessarily, yeah, you can see about those both under a microscope. Yep. But we pump these animals full of antibiotics constantly, pretty much every time we move them. And that is not good because a lot of these synthetic antibiotics are not processed by the body fully, especially when they're not needed. So they go, where do they go? Right? They have to leave the animal's body and they have to either go out in their pee or in their poop. And something that has been shown a lot I'll go to fish farms, right? Salmon farming or tuna, whatever. Um, a lot of the times, whenever the fish poop out this stuff, it's going down to the bottom of the river into a dark, cool environment where it can just sit in that bacterial matrix that lives on the riverbed. And these bacteria have to be able to survive, right? They don't want to die. These are antibiotics, right? Anti-life. So they're just trying to kill every single species of bacteria that it comes in contact with. The bacteria does not want to die. They want to be able to, live prosperously and, kind of replicate however they please. But it has created bacteria resistance and it's emerging at much more exponential rates than it used to be. So in the early 2000s, especially around Katrina, is whenever we really saw things like MRSA really emerge in hospital settings. And a lot of the times, up to 70% of the bacteria that's found in a hospital is at least slightly antibiotic resistance. And that was a study that was published in 2012. I'd imagine it's significantly more now because these bacteria don't want to die, right? So they've started talking to each other, and we're starting to see things. Salmonella is teaching E. coli in this bacterial matrix all around us how to survive in chlorinated water. So we're starting to see crazy stuff like that, not even just necessarily against like penicillin, but surviving chlorinated water or brominated water. There's a lot that's kind of concerning, or it should be at least, because we're just forcing these things to evolve. I mean, they evolve way faster than us because they're so small, but they're evolving at an exponential rate to kick these antibiotics asses. And so why do plants need antibiotics, right? Or need antibiotic compounds in them? So because there's a bacterial matrix on everything, so it's a very thin layer of antibiotics on everything, um, or of bacteria on everything, it's important that these plants don't get sick, right? These plants do not want to get sick either, but they don't have a circulatory system or necessarily like a lymphatic system or respiratory, they don't have all these systems to be able to defend themselves against bacteria like we do as an animal. They have to chemically defend themselves. So what they do instead of, instead of having a circulatory system or something like that, they do still have vascular tissue, so they pump water around and stuff, but they rely on chemicals to defend themselves. So plants like usnea is one of my favorite antibiotics. It's specifically effective against gram-positive bacteria. So things like Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, right? Those are gram-positive. Gram-positive, by the way, whenever you're looking at it through a microscope, whenever you put a like a dye on it, it'll more easily accept it because it has a double membrane on it, right? So that's what makes them gram positive. But Usnea has something called usneic acid, and the pharmaceutical industry has done what it always does, and it's pulled one chemical out of a plant, synthesized it up in a lab, and then sold it to the public. And that's called monotherapy. And that's what most Americans rock every day, right? We go around and just take one chemical, and it has side effects, which are just the effects that we don't like. So we call them side effects. But monotherapy has only gotten us so far, and it's only not going to get us a lot further, especially with antibiotic resistance. So usnea or usneic acid is the main constituent. I think most usnea is like 9% usneic acid. It generally was used for weight loss. And that's not what it should be used for, but that's what it was marketed as. And because of that, the FDA had to put restrictions on the sale of specifically usneic acid. But plants contain hundreds, sometimes thousands of compounds. And whenever compounds work together, right, whenever they help each other work better, that's called a synergist. So a lot of plants rely on synergistic abilities to function better. Things like licorice root are usually synergists or potentiators, right? So they help something work better. They really help a lot of other plants work better. So like if I combined licorice root and berberine, which is another potent antibiotic that's pretty common, it's going to work better because it's licorice has been shown to stimulate the immune system by helping a lot of our functions out. Usually it helps by helping the pancreas work better alongside the liver and the kidneys, right? So you're going to flush everything out while also increasing digestive enzymes. But plants are really cool in this way just because it's not monotherapy, right? It's I can't remember the technical term for it or the Latin word or whatever for it, but monotherapy is what we do is a pill, and plants are much more broad than that. But okay, so as we see antibiotic resistance emerge it's going to eventually have to hit mainstream media. I mean, a lot more people are starting to encounter things like MRSA, and the doctors will hit you 4 times with courses of antibiotics. Sorry, kid, it didn't work. Go home. They don't know what to do anymore just because they're trained to know what pill to give you that pill, and then reassess. And if it doesn't work, they usually don't know what to do. But antibiotics, modern synthetic antibiotics, do not stimulate the immune system, at least not in the way that herbal antibiotics do. And that's a really important part of it because it's allowing your body to turn on the immune system and kind of keep it on. Some things are immunomodulators, so they help turn it on and off, which can be really helpful for people with like immunosuppressant, kind of problems or things like HIV and stuff like that, where your immune system's kind of shot. Plants can really help with that a lot more than modern antibiotics. But how do bacteria resist, and how do they resist antibiotics? I mean, what does that even mean? So there's 4 ways that bacteria can evolve or tell its neighbor how to evolve. Like, hey, bro, this penicillin's trying to kill you. I know how to prevent it. Here, I'll tell you how. And they do that using like protein ions and stuff like that, and just kind of connecting little tubes to each other and shooting fucking messages across, essentially. But so the first way that they do it is enzymatic degradation, and that's essentially them making like digestive enzymes in their that penicillin enters. They're able to digest it and break it down before it can actually work against the bacteria. Another way is target site alteration. So things like tetracycline really rely on removing the bacteria's ability usually to stick to a cell by damaging something called hemagglutinin. Hemagglutinin is just a enzyme that most bacteria uses to bind to a cell, right? Then it has some other enzymes that are going to allow it to inject its payload and do whatever it needs to do to replicate. But target site alteration means that tetracycline is looking for that hemagglutinin, right? But the bacteria has learned that it knows that it's looking for that, so it's going to change the shape or the look, essentially the look of it, so that the antibiotic doesn't know what to attach to or it doesn't attach to anything. Um, it can also sometimes confuse the antibiotic and make it attach to other stuff that it does not need to be killing. And then that's whenever we get things like I can't remember the name of that disease, but there's some diseases where I mean the bacteria is able to completely switch your immune system and it starts attacking you. It's like in autoimmune diseases.
Is it
Um,
lupus? Are you talking about
yeah,
lupus?
yeah, lupus is an example of it. Yeah. Oh man. Oh shit. It's crazy how they can just change the information that the antibiotic is kind of attacking. But another really common way, this is usually the one that anti or bacteria really relies on, is called efflux pumps. So along the cell membrane of a bacteria cell, right? There's a lot of these pumps that are pumping things in and out, right? Waste and just whatever they don't want inside of them. And they can learn that they can pump a lot of these things out. I know, right? Jeez. I'm definitely the nerd for antibiotics, but um yeah, there's so Efflux pumps work by pumping these whatever it doesn't want inside of it out, and it can teach other ones that hey, you can, as this antibiotic, sometimes they'll even let it in, like they'll let the antibiotic in just so they can wrap it in an envelope and pump it right out, and then your body just has to circulate it out, and it didn't work. And then the last way is reducing permeability, right? So all these little holes in the cells that it's allowing stuff to come in, it can close those holes whenever there's an antibiotic present, or even whenever the antibiotic is well, okay, there's a couple ways it can do it, but it can do it just so that the antibiotic can't enter, or that nothing enters while the antibiotic is present, and then just kind of hardening its shell and curdling up. But the problem with modern antibiotics is that they only work on one mechanism of action is what they're called. So there's like, right, either it can affect the flagella, which is a common way. Flagella are like the little like jellyfish things, right? That's how bacteria moves around in the intracellular matrix. But it'll either break down its way to move or locomote, or it will dissolve the membrane itself, or it will make it not be able to connect to your cells. There's a lot of ways it can do it, right? But the problem with that is antibiotics only do one, and that's why we get broadband antibiotics, and that's way more common now. Like we didn't used to have to pump people full of 4 or 5 different types of antibiotics to beat one bacteria or one type of bacteria, right? Millions of them, but so we are starting to see that they're not working anymore as well as they used to, at least, just because these bacteria are starting to harden up their shells or pump them out faster or do whatever they need to do, and they're starting to teach each other at exponential rates. So we're starting to really see the importance of herbal antibiotics because a lot of the times these evolved along bacteria, right? Millions of years, or even if you don't believe that they evolved, then God made it so that they work together and they're able to protect themselves from infection. So they work on multiple layers of antibiotic like or bacterial kind of damaging, right? So they're going to either be dissolving and interfering with its ability to replicate by decreasing its ability to intake food and things like that. There's so like juniper. Juniper is a really broadband antibiotic. It's one of my favorite ones. I've actually been taking a little bit of juniper just because I did end up getting a tick on me, and ticks are insane little motherfuckers, and they carry some crazy shit around in them. Um, like alpha gal. Alpha gal is really scary to me, and a lot of people don't really even know what alpha gal is, but the Lone Star tick is the one that carries it, and it's not a bacteria, it's not a fungus, it's not a virus. It's a folded sugar, right? It's a sugar molecule, polysaccharide, and it can, if it enters your body, it confuses your cells and it makes it that, and it makes it so that you can no longer ever in your entire life eat red meat, dairy products, or sometimes even be around cooking red meat. Like even the smell of it will make you sick. And I mean sick, like a huge rash will form on the back of your body, and you'll get nauseous, and it's terrible. You can't eat red meat anymore. So that's kind of horrifying. But I don't know. That would just be terrible to get. But things like Japanese knotweed is another good example, specifically that's specifically tick oriented, or Juglans nigra, black walnut. It has chemicals in it because it doesn't want these bacteria to affect it, or its ability to replicate or anything like that. So we can eat those. Japanese knotweed. It was a common treatment of pickled Japanese knotweed was a common treatment for Lyme disease because it works against Borrelia bacteria species, which is Lyme disease. But um, yeah, antibiotic resistance is definitely coming up, and Lyme disease is everywhere. It's everywhere. Like a lot of the older folk that I see up here in Appalachia have Lyme disease, and they probably, like, a lot of them don't know it just because it presents like it can present almost as anything. It can present with sore joints, or uh, it's crazy how much it can present as just because
Like
it can lie dormant.
fibromyalgia,
It's one of those,
maybe.
yeah, like fibromyalgia, exactly. And and then doctors will only catch it as fibromyalgia, and they don't look into the cause of what's causing this to happen. And then they treat it, and then you have side effects from the pill, and then they give you more pills to treat the side effects. So it's kind of turns out you can make a lot of money if you just keep doing that. But I don't know. There's a lot to the implementation of specifically antibiotics. Band-Aid fixes it. Yeah, well, I think Band-Aids are a very, very good invention for us to have, but I don't know. There's a
I think he's saying it's a band-aid fix, not like a long-term
yes, okay.
fix.
I thought you
Yeah.
were talking about the physical invention of yeah, it is definitely the Band-Aid fix, but they want to keep us alive long enough that we can continue working, but not long enough that we, you know, actually enjoy our life. But I mean, that's the game that we're all kind of born into right now. But anyway, okay, back to herbal antibiotics. So one of my favorite antibiotics is actually honey. So honey has been kind of taken away. Yeah, I know they make exponential amounts of money. No, you're good. That is a whole ass rabbit hole in itself. But honey is one of my favorite topical antibiotics. And well, antibiotics, antiviral, it's antimicrobial, which just means it kills anything that moves pretty much. Um, and why would it do that, right? Why is honey medicinal? So honey is medicinal because plants are medicinal, right? Plants often put some of their medicinal aspects into their pollen, right? Because they don't want their pollen to be infected. That's how they sexually reproduce, right? That's like their sperm. So they don't want it to get infected. And bees are going bouncing around, getting thousands of different types of flowers that are all antibiotic and medicinal in their own ways, and then combining that all into the gift from nature. I mean, honey really is an incredible underused medicinally thing. Obviously everybody knows you can use honey to sweeten stuff, or bake with or whatever, but it's actually a really highly medicinal thing, especially for things like throats. There's one of my favorite books, well, not my favorite books, but it's definitely an interesting one to have on hand, is Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. This is kind of a thicker one. It's kind of uh an interesting read because I mean, a lot of these old herbalists, they would talk weird and just kind of have different weird words for stuff, so you kind of gotta be able to pick up on what he's putting down. But honey is a really, really incredible one just because in this book he talks about using it and soaking some bread in honey and then swallowing it and just kind of you know letting it coat your throat, and that's a good way to do it. But there's honey is lost is for me at least, that's like one of the primary lost medicines that people have. I mean, it was used traditionally in burn units to keep burns from getting infected, because burns are like extremely exposed. I mean, you're cutting off your epidermis. I mean, that's how we defend ourselves from the outside. And I mean, trees, they have their bark to defend them, but and I don't know, there's just so much to the chemistry of kind of almost the similarities of how our skin works and how a tree's skin works, just in pumping around uh well, kind of chemicals, I mean, we pump around our own types of chemicals and they do too, but I don't know. There's just so much to it. Just with like aspen trees, you often see, if you carve or a birch tree, you carve your initials, into a birch tree, it'll heal over eventually, but it has to heal by using medicinal sap. And that's why things like maple, maple syrup is highly medicinal. Obviously, it has to be rendered a lot. I think like 10 gallons of maple stock, I think is what it's called. Like when it comes straight out of the tree, it's almost like water. Um, 10 gallons of it makes like maybe a cup and a half of syrup once you boil it down enough, and that's a lot of energy to boil it long enough. Yeah, there's really a lot to plants are so cool. I don't know. It's like the lost connection between us and nature is us understanding how to use plants. I mean, our ancestors used to know this. Every single one of us at some point in time had an ancestor that knew how to heal themselves with some plant. And once you can tell plants apart, there's a lot of plants around you, like a lot of different plants. I mean, obviously there's a lot of greenery around you, but like right now I see pokeweed, jewelweed, a lot of weeds, turns out. And then, Virginia creeper, poison ivy, sugar maple. Yeah, there's a lot. There are pine trees, Pine is that's a whole another huge, I mean, and that's the cool thing is you could spend your whole life studying pine trees and you probably wouldn't know everything about pine trees by the end. You probably everything you learn, you learn that you don't know that much, because it just opens up a whole nother gambit of it. But here I'll go through some ah, this is a cool one. So humans throughout time have really picked our plants for a reason. Like there's a reason that we have cultivated garlic and made it a part of our culinary use, and just as a society we really use garlic a lot because it's, well, we didn't know that at the time, but thousands of years ago humans picked it because it would help keep them from getting sick. But we now know that it has chemicals in it like allicin and enulol, which are highly antimicrobial and antibiotic. But ginger root, I just flipped to my page on ginger root. This is another one that you can find really commonly in the grocery stores. Um, Again, we humans, we pick stuff on purpose because it's so helpful. But ginger obviously helps with stomach stuff. It can be used as a tea like that. But when ginger is used raw, and it has to be used raw to be able to be antiviral or antimicrobial, specifically, I say antiviral first because that's what it mostly works best as against viruses. And antibiotic and antiviral are two completely different things just because they're, I mean, they're not even in the same tree of life. So one of my favorite things for ginger is drinking its juice. So you have to, if you have a juicer, right, you can blend it up. And it's incredible how good it is for fighting bacteria and also helping specifically with candida. Candida is one of those ones that we have and our pets have, as my cat walks in. We have a big problem with yeast, right? Yeast, the most common species are candida. I think there's 16 different species. Um, but candida overgrowth causes so many problems in people, and it's very rarely talked about by doctors. But it's because we eat so many carbs and we have an imbalance in our diet. And our dogs and cats are obligate carnivores, right? So they're specifically designed, their microbiome is designed to consume meat, often raw, unless they're not they have to be a puppy at first, eating raw to be able to withstand that later on and not get sick. But they're designed to eat protein, high amounts of protein, and we feed them a lot of corn, a lot of carbs and things like that. So that gets that huge imbalance in their gut biome, and it really overfeeds that candida. And then your dog starts to get itchy skin and stuff like that because their their body is going to start pushing that excess yeast out to the skin so it can be licked off or evaporated off. Um, Ginger root is safe for dogs and cats, so you can make a tea for them, and it can help with the same stuff. I mean, it'll kill, candida overgrowth, and it'll really help with with a lot of issues, especially bad breath. Dogs have are notoriously known for having terrible breath, but especially whenever they're on a poor diet, like most dogs are, like Olroy. A lot of name brand dog foods are not actually good for their gut biome. And herbal medicine for pets is a whole nother study of herbal medicine, but that's a really cool one too. I mean, obviously we know catnip, right? Cats can take catnip and crack out for 15 minutes, but it's a species of mint, and we can also take it. And when humans take it, it's a really good neuro relaxer. Here, I think I on it here, but a really good neuro relaxer. So it's going to be almost a sedative level. And it also is a good antidepressant, anxiolytic is what it's called. Um, here, Nepeta cataria. I like how we name stuff too. Cat's claw is Unicaria tomentosa because it looks like toe beans on a cat, but humans, you know. Okay, so catnip, right? I heard in the beginning of this you were talking about you were going to be including some education on plants that help keep bugs out of your garden. And why would a plant be able to keep a bug away, right? It doesn't want to have those bugs crawling on it or eating it or trying to, messing with it at all. So they create chemicals, and the mint family is specifically notorious for making volatile oils, right? That's and during the day, especially after rainfall, um, you're going to have a lot of those volatile oils evaporating off, and that's what gives mint their really, you can smell mint before you see it usually, depending on your area. But catnip is known to repel ticks specifically, so you can make a decoction of it. um, Although it has to be low temperature decoction because you want these volatile oils and you don't want to lose them. Water retention, oh yeah, there's a lot of herbs that can help with water retention. One of the main ones I would suggest trying at least is, well, dandelion is a really good one. It acts as a diuretic. So diuretic is just going to increase your urine output. Obviously, you want to continue drinking high amounts of water. You don't want your pee to get beyond a certain level of yellow. But dandelion is a really good starter for that because it has cholinergic and chicoraic acid, is what they're called. So it's one of the chemicals that occur in the latex sap, right? The white sap in dandelions. Dandelion would be a good start, and then stinging nettle. Stinging nettle is a really, really strong warming. Well, in Chinese herbal medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, it's a warming herb, and it will really help you pee a lot. It's kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of crazy to have people throughout history talking about how these plants will make you pee more. I mean, and then you take it and it actually you pee more. Like these, it's not a bunch of hogwash. But stinging nettle, Urticaria dioica or Urtica, depending on who you're talking to. By the way, never like be worried about messing up a scientific name. Nobody knows.
Oh,
So,
we lost you for a second.
oh, you did?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, you can make a tea from both of them. Stinging nettle is kind of not my favorite tea. I would recommend eating stinging nettle because it has a lot of protein in it. Actually, it's one of the most, like, every single herbivore or omnivore would be eating stinging nettle if it didn't sting them. And that's why it has to do that to defend itself. But stinging nettle is also really good antihistamine. In fact, it's probably the most potent antihistamine in the entire plant kingdom. But and an antihistamine, think of like Claritin, or something like that, or Zyrtec. And those are kind of damaging to your body over long use. But if you just take stinging nettle every day, um, it's really, really been shown to help, especially with seasonal allergies. But plants, so whenever we're talking about like stinging nettle, right, it can help with urine output. It's antiviral, antioxidant, analgesic, so it helps with pain killing. Um, Ironically, right? But I have heard of some people with arthritis, especially like late stage arthritis or gout specifically, doing nettle whips. So I've also heard of this on horses and mules and kind of larger. Oh, did I lose you? Okay, all right, sorry. Um, so you
It's
can do
paused for a
nettle
second,
whips.
but you're good.
Yeah, yep. So these the hairs of stinging nettle, right? They have a lot of shit in them to make it hurt even more. They have a lot of histone, right? So that's what our body produces to have an allergic reaction. It has a lot of histones. It has some malic acid. It has some citric acid in there, and it injects it into your skin using these like hypodermic needle hairs. Essentially, they're called trichomes, and but you can whip yourself on your joints, and because it's causing an allergic reaction there, it's going to cause your body to react, right? And it's going to cause your or make your body pull a bunch of resources into that area to help decrease the inflammation and help circulation around there. So I've seen it only a couple times on like horses and mules whenever they get like leg injuries or if they have strain, especially on their like front or back or usually like in their front shoulders or something like that. If they have a lot of pain, you can whip them with it and it'll really help take down that inflammation there. I've never done it myself. I have gotten stung by it, and I can't imagine. I'd imagine the pain in your hand would probably have to be pretty extensive to actually want to do that to yourself, but it
It's
can help.
probably similar to like a TENS unit. Like that kind of like
Yeah,
shocks you and it hurts.
yeah, probably
But,
so.
it
Yep.
it causes that healing.
Yeah, eventually. I mean, yeah, once it kind of, I guess it just
It hurts
makes the pain
now,
different.
but for long term it
Yeah,
feels
yeah,
better.
yeah, yep. Well, you can also do a stinging nettle tea. If you, I mean, this is specifically for sore joints. You can make a tea of it and then just soak your hand in it, or make a compress, and then soak wherever in it, your knee or whatever. But that is a very good one if you're having water retention. Also, if you have water retention, that also might mean that you, specifically in your ankles, um, that might mean your circulatory system is starting to struggle a little bit and just kind of starting to have an issue, kind of properly pushing stuff around, or your lymphatic system as well. It can kind of cause drainage down in your lower extremities. There are some tests to be able to like tell stuff like that, but I would do your own kind of research into that, just to know what's causing it. But if you do have any, our body is full of indicators, and the powers that be of this world that we live in do not want us to know how to diagnose ourselves. They want us to be scared of our own body and only trust it into somebody that's wearing a white coat. You know what I'm saying? But there's signs, and they're not like complicated signs. You don't have to even know, you don't need anything. It's like things like your nails, your fingernails are have major signs that they're able to show you, or your eyes, or your breath. Even like people with diabetes generally have like it smells like rubbing alcohol whenever they are having a insulin attack in their breath. Weird shit like that. I know, right? Isn't that crazy? But
That's
yeah,
probably how
there's a lot of signs.
the dogs like can tell whether you're having
Yeah,
like a
I know, right?
diabetic,
And that's exactly
probably.
how. Yeah, because our body gives off these signs, and a lot of the times, I mean, we just don't have the senses to pick them up. But luckily, we have the sense of sight, and I mean, we can feel our body. And having a chronic condition is a lot different, just because it's a slow build up to it. I mean, obviously, if you like, you know, damaged it or herniated a disc or something like that, it's can be instant and then chronic pain. But there's a lot of very interesting treatments for chronic pain, but it has to be, if you want herbal medicine to work, it has to be used like pharmaceutical medicine. It has to be taken on a schedule, at a specific dose, at a specific time. Sometimes, I mean, 2 to 3 times a day. You can take it whenever you can, but um, it has to be treated the same or it won't work. And a lot of people don't. No, you're good. She said, yeah. But it won't work if you do not have the willpower to actually go through with it and use it as medicine. A lot of people just will take it 3 or 4 times and it doesn't work. And then they say, screw it, I'll go to the doctor. But you have to be consistent with it. And a lot of like things like Japanese knotweed, like if you're fighting Lyme disease, it's not going to work for the first even 2 months sometimes. Stuff has to build up in your body because I mean, we're constantly processing stuff out of our body, and waste. And you have to treat it like pharmaceutical medicine and take it on a schedule at a dose. But yeah, stinging nettle would definitely help with your varicose veins. But you also really want to make sure that you're encouraging the integrity of those veins, right? Because the reason that's happening is because there's a thinning of the blood vessels that are causing the pooling to occur. But you can eat. I mean, just eat if you eat a healthy balanced diet, not the American balanced diet necessarily, but things like tomatoes have a lot of antioxidants and a lot of things that really help with kind of encouraging blood vessels to increase in thickness and in strength. And elasticity is really important in the circulatory system as well. Um, but yeah, there's a whole lot to plants, and they can treat anything. Like this was one of my favorite ones to. I'll show you a little picture. This was one of my favorite ones to teach homeless individuals down in Alabama because it's so common down there. It's actually invasive. It's called mimosa or Albizia julibris, and it's not a true mimosa, the Mimosiae family, but it is a. I think this is actually in the pea family. Yeah, it's in the pea family, Fabiaceae. Um, Welcome back, Dennis. What's up? But so this is one that's a really good antidepressant, and it's one of the Um, well, the mimosa family is actually where we get DMT from. It's one of the main constituents in ayahuasca. So it kind of has these chemicals in it, not this species necessarily, but it's a very, very good antidepressant. It's not what you need, huh? Well, mimosa is a good one. You can make it. I've Homeless people are sad a lot just because of the way of life, and I mean, just being out there, fucking getting slashed on by cars. And most of the time, when people approach homeless people, they're just telling them to move and get out of here, or I'm calling the cops. So it's not necessarily the funnest life, but mimosa, I've seen a lot of really good improvements with people's mood after a couple days of mimosa. And the flowers are really pink. Sometimes it's called Persian silk tree because it's from Persia, but the flowers are pink, right? Like vibrant pink. It's really easy to spot them. And then it also you can make a tea out of that. The tea has to be. Did I write that down here? I don't think I did. It has to be between like 190 and 180 starting temperature, just because you don't want to damage some of the chemicals in it. Um, the flowers are really delicate too, but a tea of the flower, right, or a tincture of the inner bark, so the cambium, right. It has a lot of, from my experience, the tea is like right as you drink it, about 15 minutes later, you feel kind of, or at least I do, kind of a nice warm effect up here, and it just makes you feel really good, and you kind of, it's definitely antidepressant. It's kind of hard to put to words though. I mean, everybody's depressed for, or has stress for different reasons, but it kind of takes a little weight off your shoulders. It has a tea, it's much faster acting and a little less, it'll last for like 8 hours after you drink the tea. But a tincture is a lot slower burning. It'll take like half an hour or an hour to kind of kick in. And if you low dose it, I mean, it's like it's comparable to Zoloft, or even one of these powerful antidepressants, pharmaceutical wise. And it's also been shown that it can be taken alongside SSRIs, so serotonin or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So this is one of those plants that you can actually take alongside pharmaceutical medicine, and that's a whole nother. There's a lot of corners of this study of herbal medicine, but pharmaceuticals can interact with herbal medicine just because it's the same body that you're working in, right? So if you're having something that's altering it this way, then I would talk to your doctor because that's their specialty, right? They put you on that pill, they know what it does, they probably don't know jack shit about any herbal stuff at all, but they can Google that shit, and they see how it reacts, see how the path that it's taking in your body, and see if it'll affect the medication that you're on. But so just keep that in mind. Be weary, always ask what they're on first. Or alcohol. Alcohol sometimes can affect it. Speaking of alcohol, there's a very interesting plant down south specifically, and everybody knows it. It's called kudzu. Kudzu vine, highly invasive in the United States, grows on freaking everything. Road signs, it covers everything. Um, the root of a kudzu is incredibly large, and it gets you feeling like a caveman trying to rip it out for real. They can grow up to 12 feet long and up to 400 pounds, so they're definitely chonkers. You can eat them. The leaves are edible. You got to cook them first. The root's also edible. I do not like the taste of either, though, personally. But one of the very interesting things that I found with kudzu is it was used traditionally to help with alcohol dependency. So if somebody's like constantly drinking and they want to get off of it, kudzu vine has been shown to help, or kudzu root. It has to be I have a video of it on my TikTok of how to extract it, but it has to be it's kind of a harder tincture process than most stuff. Also dealing with roots, it's hard as shit to grind these up. I mean, this is an incredibly fibrous root, so it's yeah, it's definitely a fight getting it out of the ground all the way to getting it into a bottle. But it works by making your body not get drunk. Like whenever you drink alcohol, if you're taking kudzu, you won't get drunk. It prevents your liver from processing it into yeah, kudzu there. Kudzu is some people hate that shit. Some people hate it. But the federal government in the 1940s, um, because in the South they're having a lot of issues with erosion, erosion of the soil and kind of hills, and farmland. Um, the United States government, of course, doing their due diligence of zero research before they tell farmers what to do. They started paying farmers, I think it was like 50 cents an acre if they planted kudzu to help hold the land together. Um, and now it's everywhere. So that was kind of a mistake. And now it's actually illegal to plant it in the United States because of how invasive it is. So they definitely did a 180 turn on that. I'm not sure what states you guys are in, but you can definitely find this anywhere in the United States. Uh, if you're away from pollution, this one's a pollution indicator. Nevada, yeah, you can find this here, but you got to be it likes moisture, so you got to be up in the mountains in Nevada. But this is called usnea. It's kind of that bristly stuff, old man's beard is a common name for it, or just dot 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 beard. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can throw in front of beard before that, but bearded lichen. This is one of the best antibiotics in my opinion, just because it's mostly against gram-positive bacteria, like I was saying, but this is really good because it helps stimulate your immune system and it helps it turn on and off. So your body's able to react to bacteria a little bit better. Sorry, I'm just looking through my book here. Elderberry, these are not in Nevada at all. They have opposite leaves, right? So they're right across. Yeah, no, not at all. So they right across from each other like a ladder, right? Opposite. They kind of have a little bit, ribs on their leaf edge, right? So they have kind of toothed leaf edges. These are edible, but you have to cook them first. So Sambucus nigra is typically the one that is sold in stores, right? That's black elderberry. There's also Sambucus canadensis, which is a red elderberry, and that's the wild version. They can be used the same, but they both contain hydrogen cyanide, right? So humans, our version of that is sulfuric cyanide. So that's the one that they, really synthesized a lot of in Nazi Germany, to be used against humans. But it produces hydrogen cyanide, which is a lot easier to break down with heat. So all you got to do is boil them, and it'll evaporate off. And that's why you have to cook them first. You have to evaporate off that hydrogen cyanide first. But they can be eaten. I wouldn't recommend eating them. I'd recommend making a syrup. There's
That
not a lot of meat.
the
Huh?
berry, the berry
Yeah,
of
the berry of them.
it. Okay.
Yep. But it's I've kind of found a lot of research papers pointing towards a combination of the berries and the leaves, if you're making a tea out of them, just because they both have their own different constituents in them. But there's not a lot of flesh on the berries, so it's not really worth eating them. I have seen some people make pancakes with them, um, but you do you. Red maple is a good one. Cat briar, these are kind of everywhere. Not Nevada, sorry, but cat briar. Uh, They grow right at ankle heights. So when you're walking with shorts on and you're walking around, it's like catching barbed wire on your ankles. But these are a very interesting plant because there's not very many carnivorous plants in the world, right? There's a couple, there's like pitcher plant and there's Venus flytrap and things like that. Generally, there's only a handful though, but there's some that are indirect carnivores, right? So in Ireland, some of these some botanists have predicted that catbrier is specifically a carnivore against baby sheep or lambs, right? Because these thorns are extremely good at grabbing onto wool, but specifically lamb's wool, right? And lambs are really curious. Like, I mean, that's usually how they get themselves into trouble, right? They go down holes or fall in ditches, or. But catbrier has been predicted to be a carnivorous plant because it's so good at gripping onto sheep and pulling them in right as they start to freak out because they get stuck. They start to freak out and kind of go in towards the center of it, and then it dies there, and then the body decomposes under on top of the root system. And it's actually been shown that the root system will, like the bulk, the tap root of a cat briar will move underneath of a decaying body so that it can pull the nutrients from it. And it's also been shown that it has certain enzymes that are able to specifically digest meat, not necessarily lamb meat, but kind of an indirect carnivore there. There's a plants are weird for real. They'll get you caught up and eat your body slowly because that's years. I mean, taking years and years to digest. I mean, that's or to decompose on top of the roots. That's a lot of food and a lot of energy that's going back into the ground. That it can capture by moving its roots directly underneath it. It's a kind of a weird one. You guys, not Nevada, sorry. I'll go over Nevada plant here in a minute. But this is a white pine, Pinus strobus, right? Got big old pine cones, huge ones. Cactus. Oh, I love cactus. Talk about Nevada. Holy shit. Nevada, you got cactus. Is that it? I think that's it. Yucca. You guys got yucca everywhere. The eastern white pine, Pinus strobus. This is a really good one. Yeah, yucca for sure. Yucca is not really my favorite medicinal plant. It was traditionally not really used for medicine unless you want a laxative. And sometimes you need a laxative, but it was mostly used for soap making because it has so many saponins in it. Again, if you take a pump full of hand soap, it's going to act as a laxative too. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But pine trees are a very interesting one to start identifying just because they're everywhere. And if you look closely, they're really easy to tell apart. A lot of the times, the fascicles is what they're called, which is a bunch, like a little bundle of pine needles, right? They all come in little groups, and certain species, like Pinus strobus, they're in groups of four, and like in ponderosa pine, they're in groups of three, and things like that. You can look closely, and God gave us the ability to count, so might as well, count something out there. And also I mean, identifying them underneath the pine needles, pretty much every single species of pine, you're going to find it's stomatas is what it's called. That's how the plant breathes, right? It's kind of the mouth of it. And pine trees are so cool. I'm a big fan of them, just being from Colorado. But underneath them, you can like the here, let me think of a species like Douglas fir. Douglas fir has two silver stripes underneath each pine leaf, and ponderosa pine has one golden stripe underneath it. So there's if you look closely enough, plants all look extremely different once you look. All right, I'll go over cactus for you. All right, so prickly pear is one of my favorite cactuses to talk about. It's really common. It's called Aputina, is the kind of species that it's in. There's like 300 different small versions of it. Yeah, you have that one. Good. You can eat the petals of it, right? The or not the petals, the I guess they're the leaves, the big old paddles of it. Um, yeah, the pads. Yep. You can eat those. They're called nopales in traditional Hispanic cooking. They're really good. You got to burn off the glaucids, is what they're called, like the little tiny little yellow hairs. You can burn them off, grind them off on a rock, whatever. Don't eat them; they will fuck you up pretty bad. And honestly, I don't really even know what you could do to help get those out of your throat. I can't imagine. God, holy shit. But that'd be a bad way to go. I'll tell you what. Yeah. And it does act as a laxative, especially if eaten raw, it'll act as a good laxative. Just because it's so mucilaginous and it'll stay like that the entire way through you. And then you can also eat the fruit of it, right? The prickly pear itself. That's one of my favorites. Those can be eaten raw. They have a lot of seeds inside of them, though. I wouldn't recommend eating the seeds. They're kind of like little hard stones almost. I think you can eat them. I don't think they have any toxins or anything in them, but if you don't have to. Um, and then you can also eat cholla cactus. Cholla is Cylindro aputina, right? So it's like the cylindrical version of that. So cholla is like you probably see them everywhere in Nevada, but they're the jumping cactus is a common name for them, just because they're known to grab onto you as you're walking by, so it'll look like they're jumping onto you. Um, but that one's also edible. It does not have nice, hearty little fruits that the prickly pear has, but it's also a good laxative as well, just because that mucilaginous. There are some toxic species of cactus. Yeah, they do look super dangerous, and they were often used as fortifications around like the Alamo. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to walk through that even as a soldier. But oh god, I can't imagine. Ugh. Mm-mm. There are some poisonous species of cactus, I mean, to humans, but they are all very easy to tell if they're poisonous because they will have a white, milky sap. So, right, when you pop them off or pop them open, it won't be clear. It'll be sap, like white and milky, kind of latexy looking. Those are poisonous. Those are called pencil cactuses. I can't remember the scientific name or scientific family that they're in, but that's how it is. I'm a big fan on the scientific names, just because everything's related. So they say. But all right, a little bit of mushrooms. Speaking of antibacterial and antiviral capabilities, the I know mushrooms, not those kind though, not necessarily the fun ones that last for 8 hours. But Trimedes versicolor is one of my favorite ones, and that's turkey tail. Yeah, that's a Amanita muscara. That's the most common one. That's the Yeah, well, it doesn't work on psilocybin. It works on muscimol, so it's a little bit of a different Mariota. Yeah, that's the one. Isn't that weird that they use the psychedelic one? That's also Colorado state mushroom. Isn't that crazy? Um, yeah, well, that's how we do it down there. I think psilocybin's legal in Colorado now. Praise the Lord. Or it's not criminalized or basically legal. Okay, so Trimedes versicolor turkey tail, right? This is one of the premier anti-cancer mushrooms in the world. It's actually the only species of mushroom that the FDA has funded research towards. That's crazy to me, first of all. Do you know how many mushrooms there are? And they've only picked one to fund, but it has been shown to be very, very antimicrobial as well, but it's mostly used for its anti-cancer. And actually in Japan, since I think 2014, maybe 2012, it's actually been a key part of their treatment of cancer alongside chemotherapy, just because it really bats down a lot of the side effects of chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is like it's like microwaving your body essentially, and it has a lot of terrible side effects because of that. So turkey tail is usually used alongside of it, and it's also a potentiator of chemotherapy, so it helps it work better in your body and kind of know where to go a little bit more accurately. But definitely a very interesting mushroom. Another one of my favorite mushrooms is here, I think I got it in here. Lion's mane, Heronesium erinaceus. That's a good one. That's a very interesting one. I mean, mycology is a totally different like beast. I mean, that's a different, completely different part of the tree of life, but it's a very, very, very huge one too. I mean, people have like oh, what's that guy's name? The mushroom guy. Everybody knows who I'm talking about when I just say the mushroom guy. Yeah, that guy. He up in Oregon, he has dedicated his whole life to mushrooms, and he's still discovering new species. So we haven't even tapped the surface of it. And the FDA, that's a whole nother thing. But um, lion's mane is the only species of mushroom that has been shown I mean, shown in clinical studies to actually be able to regrow brain matter and brain cells and re rekindle kind of synapses and stuff like that. It's a very, very interesting one. It can be cooked with. Yeah, Paul Stamets, that guy, exactly. The Mushroom King, Papa Smurf, I think is his. That's his nickname, but at least to me it is. But God, there's so many plants out there, y'all. It's crazy. Just flipping through this. Sumac. I love sumac. If you're in the sorry, no, this is not for Nevada. This is Eastern talk. I love sumac, not poison sumac. That's a different species. But Ruis copalium is the one that I have come across, and that's winged sumac. Yeah, African sumac. Yep. Winged sumac is pretty much like regular sumac. I mean, it has opposite leaves, right? But you can see on the stem, it has kind of little leaves that are growing alongside the stem. So it looks like the stem has little wings. That's why it's winged sumac. We humans, we name stuff for a reason. Um, Sumac aid is one of my favorite things that I've ever drank from the herbal kingdom. Sumac Aid is a cold water extract, basically making lemonade with it. And it tastes like strawberry lemonade. It's naturally sugar, a little bit. I mean, you can add sugar or honey, whatever, you know. Um, we modern humans, we have a sweet tooth, turns out. But Sumac Aid is definitely one of my absolute favorite, and it's really high in antioxidants. Not many people know what the word antioxidant means, but as we breathe oxygen, a lot of cells inside of us are starting to oxidize, right? And we don't want that to happen all the time. And if it happens too much, you'll get something called a free radical, and that can cause damage in certain types of cells. Usually, I think it's usually in like phagocytes, so like white blood cells and stuff like that. It can start interfering with their operation. But antioxidants are really important to kind of help regulate that and prevent free radicals from forming. It's also been shown to lower ROS, which is reactive oxygen species. So it'll help increase the amount of oxygen that's being produced by them, or by the plants around it as well. Just because it helps support their root systems and things like that, and it'll help them function better as a whole. So it's kind of an interesting one to plant. I wouldn't really recommend planting this one. It's better. Usually cultivated sumac is more bitter and has a lot less of a good taste to it than wild sumac. But that's not an uncommon thing in plants. A lot of the times you'll get well, it depends. I mean, you can pick something, here and then go a block away and pick the same type of plant, and it'll taste completely different. Bitter or sweet or whatever. It just depends on the soil chemistry and what's around it even. Like I found that with pokeweed. Yeah, yeah, the metabolites of it, it'll help with the kind of processing of them. Malic acid, yeah. So the thing that makes sumac sour with sumac aid, and it has malic acid. So we humans, we like to sprinkle it on our warheads and stuff like that and make them crazy sour. But the reason this plant has malic acid on it is to prevent bugs from getting on it, right? That's why it has these defenses. It's not for us to make lemonade with necessarily, but it's mostly for its defense and also to attract some species of birds. Some species of birds specifically prefer things to have not necessarily, I mean, they're not necessarily tasting it, but it helps their digestive processes and stuff like that. And a lot of seeds like what's a good example? Beautyberry, American beautyberry, Calliocarpa americana. That's a really one of my favorite ones. It has such a weird, very floral taste to the berry. It is a very good it's a very good cover crop because well, it's called I can't remember the technical name for it, but it doesn't start producing leaves until it's about 3 feet tall, so that it can get above any fires. So if there's a low ground fire, it'll stay nice and high above that. Yeah, I can't remember the technical name for it. Maybe I have it in here, but definitely one of my favorite plants to have. But that seed has to pass through the digestive tract of a bird to be able to be planted because it has to go through an acidation process. Or we humans, right? We can make vinegar and we can just soak in vinegar for a little bit or something like that to kind of, or we can etch it. There's some plants that need to do something like that. They don't won't just fall and be planted. Like
It's funny because I have three beautyberry bushes and they
oh,
like
I love them.
reseed themselves all over the
Oh,
place.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think they also spread through rhizomes, so they go underground as well. But
Okay,
there's
maybe.
also birds eating them all the time, pooping,
Yeah.
sitting
Yeah.
on the branch, pooping right next to them. So
Hmm.
they're definitely very aggressively growing, but they are native here, so they're a good one to have. You can also make jelly with it. The jelly will turn a nice bright, like neon pink. Yeah, a lot of bird poop around there, and that's good for them too. I mean, but Calliocarp americana, that is one of the best mosquito repellents that I've come across personally. The leaves of it, you can make I think it's a liniment and a decoction combined. A liniment is just a tincture made with rubbing alcohol instead of eating alcohol. And then you use it topically instead. But it's a very good one because it has calicarpiniol and intramediol is what they're called. And those are very very good against or keeping mosquitoes away from them, and that's why they smell like the beauty berry smell is a very hard one to describe to somebody just because it's
Hmm.
so uh
It's almost
It's
chemical.
very, I know it's kind of, yeah, it is kind of, well, I had heard from somebody down in Alabama. I think it was I can't remember her name, but she was the head of their native plant society down in Mobile. And she was telling me that it's predicted that Native Americans, whenever they used to cultivate this land, because they really did, they had food forests, active food forests everywhere to be able to sustain themselves in every season. But they would have two cultivars going, right? They have one type of beautyberry that would be for that they would keep going for bug repellent, and then one that they would have for eating. And since Native Americans have been removed from the agricultural process in that sense, they have cross pollinated a lot. So some beautyberries taste like rubbing alcohol essentially, and some of them taste like pretty good like a I don't know, it's hard to describe, like a blueberry kind of texture, but I don't know, it is still chemically, even the edible ones, but they have been cross-pollinated, I mean, for hundreds of years now, so it's definitely lost their potency. But yeah, if you want to make bug spray, if the berries taste like shit, then it's good bug spray. And if they taste good, then they taste good for eating, you know. But it's also been shown to be effective against MRSA, Salmonella, and many cyanobacteria. So cyanobacteria aren't really something that we humans come across very often, but when we do, modern medicine doesn't have very many answers to treat those. It's similar to prions or prions, you know, um, kind of horrifying. There's some stuff out there that can really like destroy your body, and modern medicine just has no answer to it at all. It can also treat herpes simplex and Candida albicans. So Candida albicans is the species, the most common Candida overgrowth species that we have in our gut. Herpes simplex. Herpes is one of those viruses that a lot of plants can treat. Ironically, even though I think it's like 75% of humans have it, it's just dormant in most of us. I know, right? Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And then a root plus a berry. So the root of it plus the berries as a decoction was traditionally used for colic in the 1800s. It's also been shown to specifically like work in modern medicine for treating colic in babies as well. Um, Stem and the bark can help with bug bites. I have been hiking around in Alabama, and man, holy shit, the mosquito is their state bird. It's crazy down there. And it's I'd be making like wreaths out of beautyberry branches and fucking, walking around like a cryptid. And it's definitely a very good one to have on hand, or at least know how to identify, just to keep bugs off of you. And it's actually been shown to be more effective against mosquitoes that are treating malaria, or that are carrying malaria. So if the mosquito is carrying malaria or yellow fever, it's more easily repelled by beautyberry. Isn't that weird? I guess it affects their chemistry or something like that too, or their
Interesting.
I know, isn't that, yeah, plants, huh? They're weird. The boiled roots, I've never used the roots personally in my own practice, but apparently they can be used for stomach aches and dizziness. Um, yeah, I've never used them myself. I can't imagine they taste very good as a I have come across sassafras, and that is incredibly good. It's actually the root beer. Sassafras was the original root beer flavor. Now we just synthesize it because the FDA in the 1970s banned the sale of sassafras after they poisoned a bunch of rats with safrole. They gave them I think like 300 times the dose that a human could consume, um, and gave them liver cancer. So, and then they made it illegal to sell products that have safrole in them. So that pretty much banned sassafras. And sassafras used to be one of America's most highly exported plants, like in the United States at all. It almost went extinct because humans would. It's root beer, I mean, shit. It tastes good, and it has a naturally occurring yeast on its root, so you can make root beer just by dropping it in water and adding some sugar, and then it'll naturally carbonate itself and everything. Definitely a very, very, very cool one to come across. Here, I'll see if I can do a Nevada one. I don't know. There's a lot less plants in Nevada. Thistle, I'll go over thistle. Something that doesn't need a lot of water. Thistle. Okay, so bull thistle, Sericium vulgare. By the way, plant like the Latin and the things that we use, specifically the epithet. So there is the genus and the epithet, right? So like aloe vera, right? Genus, epithet. So the epithet usually tells you something about the plant. So vulgare or vulgaris means common. So it means it's highly, you're going to find it everywhere. Um, and then sericum just means it's in the thistle family. Okay, so bull thistle is all the thistles are generally pretty hepatoprotective, right? So they're going to not only support the liver, but they're also going to protect it. Um, Milk thistle seeds are normally the common one that you're going to see online advertised for, helping with liver stuff. But they're actually well, there's been some studies done on it, on thistle seeds specifically, but apparently they are potent enough of a liver protector that they are able to treat Amanita muscaria poisoning, which is a kind of a common one that people get poisoned by, and that's that yellow, that red and white mushroom. What do you got there? Yeah, bull thistle. It looks weird. Here I'll show this one here too. It's got purple little tufts at the very top. Really, really pokey. It does not like things eating it, turns out. But it also is very good for toothaches, wound healing. Yeah, very dangerous. Well, yeah, Amanita has to be processed in a very specific way. Most psychedelic containing stuff do. Um, yeah, yeah. But it's also been shown to help with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that's a really common one, especially in modern. The modern human body is getting constantly berated by a lot of toxins and poisons and just bullshit. But we have to sustain it somehow, and our bodies will often give us signs like giving us issues in everywhere it can to try to tell us something's wrong. But and I think PCOS has actually been linked directly to the use of certain brands of tampons that contain these chemicals that damage usually it's the pH level. And I mean, we're complex little creatures walking around here, but there's a lot to protecting specifically the female body. It's a lot more complex than us. They gotta grow life in there. That's a hard task to do. Mullein, this is one of my favorite plants because well, kind of. It's everywhere. Mullein verbascum thapsus, that's the most common species. That's giant or great mullein. There's a lot of subspecies like white mullein I've come across a little bit, Indian mullein. But Indian toilet paper is the common name that I grew up with it. It is a very, very soft leaf, but if you wipe too hard, those little those little hairs can cause a little irritation. So just use it gently. But mullein is one of the best ones for tuberculosis. There's been a lot of studies on it, and it was actually introduced to the United States from Ireland. It's not native here, but it spreads extremely easily because its seeds are so tiny. And as humans, in the 1700s are harvesting their crops, with the scythe, they're just cutting everything down that's in the way. And then they try to shake out the seeds later and put them in bags. And then those mullein seeds get in those bags and they plant the crops, and then mullein gets here. And this is one of the best ones for tuberculosis because it really supports the respiratory system. It's been used as an herbal smoke, like inhaling the smoke. I know that might sound weird, medicinal smoke, but in tuberculosis wards, you can actually still see pictures in the 1920s of usually southern Texas. That was where it was kind of epicentered at. But they would use smoke to help with the coughs caused by tuberculosis and the scarring of it, as alongside teas and stuff like that as well. But we don't really understand exactly what it was for. But now that we do, and we can do a full chemical analysis of every single chemical and polysaccharide and everything that's in it, we now know that it does actually support lung health by increasing well, it decreases mucus production and increases it at the same time, but in specific parts of your body at certain times. Like if you're having a lot of phlegm, this will help you cough it up in kind of concerningly large clumps sometimes. But we've all been there, I guess. And poultices, this is a good one to use as a poultice. Traditionally, it was used to help with snake bites. It was combined with plantago, is the family that plantain is in. They can all be used the same, but they are extremely good at drawing out, and even it's been shown in modern research that they can neutralize certain species of snake venom when used as a poultice. So they chemically actually like alter it and break it down. But yeah, they're very interesting. I never used the root syrup of them. I don't really like using the roots of most plants, but mullein, it's like a try to rip that shit out of the ground every time you come across it, pretty much. You know what I'm saying? Because it's really invasive here, and it just fucking keeps going. It just keeps making seeds, blowing in the wind. Doing whatever it can. One of the most I've only come across this specific use of mullein seeds once, and I think it's kind of one that herbalists have kept hidden from the general public. So don't tell your buddies that'll fucking abuse this shit. But if you grind up mullein seeds, like you grind them up, right? You make them into a powder and you throw it in a body of water, it'll stun all the fish. So that's a weird one. It'll stun them. Isn't that weird? Yeah. So it's not, I mean, this is an incredibly common plant. And I think if that knowledge got into the wrong hands of the wrong fishermen, I think that'd be not a good. I mean, we got firecrackers though, you know what I'm saying? So I guess it's kind of the same, but it's weird that it stuns them. It doesn't kill them either. It just stuns them for I think it's like 10 to 15 minutes. But kind of a weird. Plants are weird. They have a lot of uses, and I'm sure dozens and dozens of uses that we still haven't identified yet. But our ancestors somehow knew these, just through fucking trial and error, I guess. I can't imagine how much trial and error it would take to find a
Right.
medicinal plant. Oh
Right.
man. Yeah.
And how many
Uh
people like took the wrong thing and then
I know.
they,
Holy crap.
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you're doing great. It is about 8:20. So if
Okay.
you want to do some question or like
Yeah.
Q&A,
Yeah. If you guys have any
see if
questions
anyone
about
has
anything or
questions.
yep. Sorry, I'm a yapper. That's
No, I mean, I love it. Like, I love all this information. So
yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of those stuff I have around me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these once you can tell plants apart, you realize how many there actually are.
yeah.
Yeah. But if you have any questions on anything specific or any plants in your area or anything, I'm not I haven't been to every state in the US, but I do know a lot of plants. Like I would consider myself an expert on Colorado plants, but not necessarily Nevada, sorry. But there's not as many plants there, luckily. So
And then Tracy's over in Canada, actually.
Canada. Oh
Yes.
shit, that's cool.
I
Yeah,
think
there's
it's
a
Saskatchewan, I think.
yeah, there's a lot of biodiversity up there for sure. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
Saskatchewan. But she
absolutely.
has a really short growing period. So
Yeah,
she's
definitely.
starting to
That's like
put
its own.
stuff in now.
Yeah. Jeez. Hmm.
All right, so here I got a
Plants are
question for you.
starting. Yeah. Yep.
So you were talking about like modern day medicine, right? Like it always has to keep evolving and evolving because the viruses and the bad things in our bodies, right? They basically
Hmm.
build up an immunity to these things. How is it possible that these plants can fight it off without the adaptation, I guess?
Yeah. Okay. So the plants aren't evolving pretty much at all in
Right.
front of us. Not as fast as bacteria is,
Yeah.
especially. So these plants have had to find the kink in the armor, essentially, of these
Mm-hmm.
bacteria, right? So they act on modern antibiotics act on one pathway, and that's why we have
Mm-hmm.
to take 5 types of antibiotics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But plant antibiotics act on multiple pathways for each plant. And in doing so, it makes it extremely difficult for bacteria to out evolve that, right? Like usneic acid will dissolve the flagella of pretty much any species of, well, any negative species of bacteria that it comes across, or what we consider negative. And it's yeah, so they use multiple mechanisms of action to be able to prevent bacteria from out of, and they're not really bacteria is not really exposed to this stuff as often either, so
Right.
it's not learning it constantly.
Mm. No, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yep. Dandelion, stinging nettle, and plantain. Yeah, that's like the trifecta. And mullein, if you add mullein in there, they're everywhere. I think dandelion is on pretty much every single continent besides Antarctica. But that's how it be. There's not
What are you
much on
gonna
there
do?
right now. Yeah, what are you gonna do about that, huh? But I don't even know if there's anybody there to pick it really. So, and if they are there, they're not there for dandelion. So, but yeah, that was a good question. I think that's where a lot of people get confused on why herbal antibiotics work best compared to
Mhm.
modern stuff is because they're not exposed to it as often and they have multiple mechanisms of action that bacteria can't out evolve. Because if it evolved to be able to stand that, it wouldn't be the same. They couldn't be the same species of bacteria. You know what I'm saying? It'd be
Yeah.
completely different, or it'd have to be. Yeah. Which is why it only affects certain species, because those ones are evolved to, well, not necessarily specifically to be able to withstand antibiotics, but they're evolved in a different way that doesn't get affected by it, as especially as hard. But yep.
So I showed up late and I apologize, but like
Oh, you're good.
you're hella smart. Where the hell did you go to
Well,
school?
where did I go to school? No, I haven't. I haven't actually had any technical training in this. A
Oh,
lot of the
okay.
time, well, I grew up in Colorado. Both my parents are forestry majors, so I was out in the woods a lot.
Mm,
They didn't really have much expertise or knowledge on herbal medicine at all. I mean, it's not really mainstream knowledge.
yeah,
But they did know a lot about pine trees and a lot of different grasses and stuff, and kind of introduced me to the idea that there is different plants and we can actually tell them apart.
yeah.
Um, and then about 2 years before I got out of the Navy, I started really studying herbal medicine hard and kind of the body and just kind of the systems of the body and just how we work. I mean, we're really complicated robots, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
and yeah, and then I've just been studying daily ever since then. And I mean, that's what I do all day long is I read or I study or
Nice.
about one specific plant usually.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for your service.
Yeah, yeah,
My
absolutely. It
cousin's
was
on the
a
bush, so
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh God. On a carrier. I can't imagine that. Holy shit. That is a totally different life than I mean, I was on a medium-sized ship,
Okay.
but man, carriers, yeah, they're out there for fucking like a year plus sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a buddy on the Lincoln,
Okay.
and they I think they hold the record, at least for the West Coast, of most days for not touching ports. Which does not sound fun for the average sailor, but
No.
I think they made the record because of COVID though. Like they were
Uh,
already out there and then COVID hit and then they couldn't come back and they just stayed out there. But yeah, it's definitely an experience in life. The Navy was, but I would not do it again. I don't think the money was good. They paid good, but besides that, I don't know. It was
yeah.
it was all right.
I just
Yeah.
retired from the Air Force in March, so
Oh, really? Yeah, they pay good then. Hell yeah. Retirement pay. That's
I
even
mean,
better.
yeah, retirement pay is all right. I have
What
yet
is
to
it?
be paid though,
80% of your
so
highest month or whatever?
50.
What?
It's so I'm on
50?
I'm under the high three, which no longer exists. So I get 50% of my pay for the rest of my life. The new
Oh, okay.
guys, probably somebody like you, there is no such
Yeah.
thing. You guys have that
Yeah.
basically like a 401k program. So
Yeah, we have the blended retirement. So even if I had
oh yeah,
stayed in for 20 years,
no,
I would not have been able to pull out
right.
from my retirement account until I was 65. And they keep increasing retirement age.
Yeah. Yeah.
God.
It
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
suck. But I
All
that
right.
definitely discouraged me from
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
continuing.
I get it. At
Yeah.
least you got your schooling out of it though. So
Yeah, hell yeah. All right. Well, I hope you guys learned something. I'm sure you did, a little
for
bit at
sure.
least. Um,
For sure.
Yes.
but if you
Thank
want to
you so
learn
much
more,
for coming.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
thank you for having me.
yeah, I'm sure we'll want to have you again,
Yeah.
So as we get bigger, I'm sure there'll be more people as well. So
Yep. Yep.
I mean, really we can never stop learning about plants. There's just so much going
I
on.
know.
So
It keeps going. Yep.
yeah. So
Yeah.
but yeah, for anyone I was gonna say something at the end, but oh
Well, I mean, if you
well.
want to find me on social media, I'm on
Oh yeah.
TikTok. I mean, that's mainly where I live on the internet. Um, since we all have to have a little home somewhere on the internet. But I do post. I try to post daily, but I don't know. There's not a lot of educational information on TikTok, so it's kind of refreshing. Hopefully, I come across your For You page. So yeah, thank you for having me again. It was really Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
fun
gonna
talk for me. I'm a yapper, so
I will post that in the group, his link to his
Oh yeah,
TikTok as well
thank you.
mhm.
as you also sell like booklets for homeless people, right?
Yeah. Yep, I
Um,
sell zines. Zines are kind of like the old, it's like a little 8-page booklet. It's a single piece of paper folded into an 8-page booklet. So it's easy to make photocopies and distribute. But they're just little booklets on kind of how to identify and use one specific plant. So, um,
so
yeah,
I'll post that in the group as well. So if you guys want to check that out and
yeah,
also just like donate to that as well if you want.
yeah, yep. Well, I really appreciate you guys. I hope you have a good Tuesday evening. I know it's time's kind of moving weird, so I guess the weekend will be here tomorrow or something like that. So, yeah.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you
All right.
so
man.
much. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
guys.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
one.
Bye.
Bye.